Hey y'all, welcome back to the internet. This is Avery, and this is the Photoshop exercise number 1, part 2. Number 1, part 2. And in this portion of exercise number 1, we will finalize the animation using Photoshop and export it as an animated GIF. And as a reminder, in part 1, we made a line drawing with Sharpie and paper that we only took 5 minutes to make, and we observed something in our space, and then we took a photo of that image, we cleaned up that image, cropped that image in Photoshop to a very specific ratio or proportion of 880 pixels by 1080 pixels, 72 ppi, and then traced that image in Illustrator so that it was a vector image. So check out the link in the description below for part 1 if you missed it. So now let's go into Photoshop and finalize our animation. So there are a bunch of steps, so pay attention how this is going to happen. You might need to watch this a couple times because it's a little bit like, it's a dance, it's a juggle, it's fun. So the first thing we're going to do is create a new document. Yes, we want it to be the same size as our Illustrator document. So 880 pixels by 1080 pixels, 1080 pixels, and then we want it to be 72 pixels per inch, and we're going to go to RGB color. So that's important, RGB color, and all of this looks delicious. So we hit create, and boom, here we are. Let's bring in our Illustrator document, and this will be done with a linked document. So file, place linked, and we find our Illustrator document, place, all this is good, bounding box makes sense, right? Let's do art box, nope, bounding box, do bounding box, okay. And then there it is. So it will, because all the sizes are the same, 880 by 1080 pixels, we can just hit, it's in there, but it's not like set. So you can use the arrow keys to move it around, but it's where it should be. It landed right in the middle of the document. So we can hit enter, and it's there. And notice this right here. So in the little thumbnail preview on the layer for our still life drawing demo, you can see that there is a icon of a chain link. Linked. All right, so it's linked to Illustrator. Great. So when we make changes to this in Illustrator, it will affect this. So let me show you. So here's our document in Illustrator. If I go, actually, I want this to be blue, then I go File, Save, it's blue. There. Now when I go to Photoshop, did you see that? Magic. So that is one way you can do it, by placing linked an Illustrator document into Photoshop. You can also do this. I'll show you really quickly. So back to Illustrator. We take our selection, so with the direct selection, or our thing, our whatever it is, it could, here, it could be a square. You click on that. You could Command or Control C to copy it, and then go into Photoshop and Command or Control V to paste it, and then you have this window pop up, and you would want to do it as a smart object. So smart object also links any type of vector shape that you create in Illustrator, so that when you hit enter and move it in here, now the way you affect this is you come here, double click again in the thumbnail. You can double click on, it's a cloud icon now when it's a smart object versus a place linked. Double click on that, give it a second, and notice that it opened up this in Illustrator. And so now I can, affect this document as I see, not document, but this shape as I see fit. And then if I hit save, file, save, go back to Photoshop, it updates. And if for any reason it doesn't update, you can right click on the layer, and then you come here to update. It's barely showing up in yours, but update all modified content. But it should show up. So I don't need that smart object. I just need, I'm clicking and dragging it down to the trash can. You're going to learn some things in Photoshop just by trying to follow along with this tutorial. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our animation situation. We want to create 1, 2, 3 different frames of animation, and we'll use the timeline to do that. And we want to have 3 different colors in each frame. And so in order to do that and keep ourselves organized, we're going to create 3 different groups that represent each frame, and then in each group we will have 3 different layers that represent the 3 colors in each frame. So let me just start. So if you come down here at the bottom, while we're in our layers panel, if you click 1, 2, 3 groups, now we have group 1, group 2, group 3. And I'm actually going to make this easy. So I'm going to call this frame 1, frame 2, and frame 3. And this is good to just keep organized in your files as you do this. And in frame 1, I'll click on it. I want 1, 2, 3 new layers. And I'll just know that these are color 1, 2, and 3. No, I need to change them. So color, let's say, I'm going to have this be green dot 1. This will be red dot 1. And this will be gray dot 1. So that was important because you'll see now when I make these new, I have to click on my frame 2, right, the second group that I created. I'm going to add 1, 2, 3 to there. And you see the layer numbers would keep building up. So if I go to frame 3, that group, for example, and add 1, 2, 3. So it's not like I can just add layer 1, 2, and 3 to each one. So it's important that now I come here and my first layer on this one will be green dot 2 because it's part of frame 2. This would be red dot 2 and gray dot 3. Okay, so now we have those layers. Our layer organization is on point. So now, before we start adding colors and animating, let's add a background layer. So it's white right now, and I can make this go away. It's also this like default background that is locked. So in order to affect this, we need to unlock it. So you double click on the lock. Oops, no, you just click on once on the lock. And if you ever need that lock back, look up here in the layers panel right here. You can add a lock to any layer you want. But then you just click it to make it go away. And now let's double click it. And right now it's white. So we want to overlay a color and change it to something. So color overlay, come here. And then, I kind of want mine. What do I want it? I do like this yellow situation. Yeah, let's go there. And again, this is affectable. This is adjustable. So it looks white there in the preview in the layers, but I know that this is my background. When you double click on the background layer, or when you remove it from its locked position, it will change to layer 0. So now I renamed it to background, and if I ever need to come in here and change the colors, I can just double click on color overlay here in this hierarchy and adjust as I see fit. Okay? Cool. Now the next thing I'm going to do is set up, you still with me? You still with me? I'm going to set up a swatch panel, or a swatch library. Is that what they're called? A swatch, wait for it, group. And these will be the 3 different colors that I use. And I can affect these later on. I can change them. But, you want to kind of have a sense of what you want to do. So this is going to be demo. And in demo, I want to add 3 different colors. And so do you see that when you click there, it's going to add a color, and it's going to add the color that is selected, your foreground color. So you can see that right here. If you want to switch that, you can come here to the color menu and find your color, or you can also double click the foreground color. It's right here. The background color is the white. The foreground color is this brown. And this I want to be my green leaves. And I kind of want them to be that. Okay? So I hit that. I have my color selected. I'm going to go back to swatches, and I'm in my swatch group, and then I will hit plus. And this is going to be in my green. Cool. I'm starting to build my swatch group. Add that in. That's great. Okay. So these will be important because we're bouncing around between different layers as we create this multi-frame animation. And say when we go from gray 1 to gray 2, we want to be able to very quickly pick this gray again for our brushwork. Speaking of which, now we're on to the brush part. So this is this like a little bit of layer juggling when we're doing painting. And after I intro the brushes, I'll fast forward my process of painting this all in. So brush in Photoshop is B on the keyboard, and you can see it comes up right here. When you hover over brush, let's come hover. You can do it. All right, so I had some technical difficulties. I think it's more to do with my computer than anything else. But when you hover over a brush, right, this doesn't work, but I discovered that if I click this little push out menu, it will work now. Oh, are you kidding me? Oh, I just had to activate it. Maybe. All right. So that essentially, come on, you can do it. You can do it. You can. There. So when you hover over these things, when you hover over a tool, you should get this pop-up. This is a really useful thing, especially when you're just learning Photoshop, where you can learn more about the tool that you are hovering over. So here is more information about what is this one? About the brush tool. And specifically, you can kind of scroll through. It gives you really quick, this one, 3 steps about what to do, or 3 bullet points of information. But there is a tutorial that you can watch right here, how to use Photoshop brushes. Check it out. But now you have a sense that all of these tools, you can access a little bit more information through Photoshop and sort of within the app. So it's really a great resource to use as you're learning a new software. Okay, so we want the brush tool, which is B on your keyboard, B, brush tool, B, brush. And then we are going to start painting. So let's look at some of the options that we have and then some of the modifications we can make to our brushes first. So for this, we want to keep it loose and free. So what we're going to do is use, we're going to have a pretty big brush. I want you all to use a pretty big brush. So, you can see 133 pix versus, 495 pixels. But keep it in the 100, 100 to 400 range, but keep it big, keep it loose. And also hardness, we want it, hardness, let's see. So if it's really hard, let me change my color. Y'all. I need to make sure I'm on the layer I'm about to go over that, but you need to make sure that you're on the layer that you want to work on. So this is where this layer juggling comes in. But that's a very hard brush versus something like this. So all the way down is a very soft brush. So this is where you get like this airbrush technique. And this is where we want to show you that in this brush, you want, the flow is the amount of, so an airbrush is a physical thing it's a pneumatic device where paint goes through a brush that's pushed out. It's not a brush, but it's like a spray gun. Air pushes paint, a really dispersed paint out through a metal tip. And so this is a digital version of that physical device. So if you want to reduce the flow, the amount of paint that comes out, you can see you can actually build up your details here. And what I'm noticing is, as I paint here, that my lines are actually below all my layers, and I want them to be to the top. So how do I do that? Well, one technique, and the technique I recommend, is you click and drag, and then you can just sort of hold it and pull it all the way to the top. And then that, if you dropped it there, it would be in frame 3, that group, but we want it to be just above it. So you got to wait till you get, that's also in frame 3, but right there is above it. So now my lines are above. And I'm going to come back and click on the screen. And then if you want to, on the fly affect your size of your brush, you can hit the the close bracket makes it bigger. The open bracket makes it smaller. And these are right below the backspace or delete key. So open bracket, close bracket, bigger and smaller. And then if you want to affect the hardness on the fly, which would be this. So keep an eye on that as I do this. So if you hit shift and then the close bracket, it makes it harder. And then if you hold shift and open bracket, it makes it softer. And opacity, you can leave that at 100% because we can actually affect the opacity over here. So when you have a layer selected, you can affect the opacity. We'll look at that in just a second. But each layer or each group, you can affect its opacity. And we're going to affect the groups when we do our onion scanning technique. Hang on. We're going for a ride, y'all. So Let me go through and I'll quickly paint the first layer. I'll speed up this process, and then we'll look at the first frame. I'll do all 3 colors, and then we'll look at how we onion skin to do the next 2. Okay? So check this out. Oh, I guess I should point out, when you have the brush, and I'm going to start with green, so I'll be clicked on my green layer, and then I'll just start painting. I'm going to keep it loose, right? I just want to keep this real loose. I know that my flow up here is at 53, so if I want a more opaque thing, I'm going to probably have to go over it a couple of times. And that is exactly what I want. So then to switch to my red, I'm going to make sure I'm on my red layer. I still have my green color as my foreground color, so I want to click here in my swatches. This is why we made this swatch group. I select that in my swatches panel, and now I'm making it a little bit smaller because this just needs to be this sort of trunk detail here, or whatever you call that, stem. And that's it. Those are the only, that's it for the red. And then for the brown, here we go. Or what did I call this? Gray. So I'm going to have gray being here for this part. So actually, I want to come see what I did. I didn't switch layers. Learning lessons. But actually, I'm going to come back to red because I forgot that I want my red to also be in this area. Make it bigger, paint this in, keeping it loose and free and fun. And then I'll come up to my gray layer, I'll select my gray color. Cool. So that's it. That's the process. All right, and then I'm going to do that on every layer or in every frame. So I can actually reduce this. And now I'm going to make this less opaque so that I kind of have a guide for the next layer. This is called onion skinning in animation. So I'll come here. I'll turn it down to, let's just say like this. And then I kind of know where I'm operating, even though, I mean, I pretty much do anyway because it's straightforward. But I'm going to come green. Make it bigger. Again, so this can go pretty quick, right? We're just really quickly creating an image. Then I'm going to switch to red. Make it smaller. This is the juggling. It's important. You know what? I'm going to add some shadow here. Love it. I want to do that. So that means I need to come back down to my other layers and do that. Switch, come back, turn that up. I'm going to turn this off with visibility. And I'm going to add this gray. I sort of know generally where it is, where I put the other one. All right. And then I'll turn this back on. I'll turn this one off because I'm sort of working my way up in this animation. And now I'll onion skin this down to sort of 50%. And then I'll start with green. So green layer, green color, painting my leaves. I guess I'm not really speeding this up, but it's a pretty fast process. Who's bored? No one's bored. You're all captivated. You're all entranced. You're all wondering what's about to happen. Red, red. Get that trunk, or whatever. What are we calling it? Leaves, branches. Who knows? Coloring in. So I hope you understand what I'm talking about with the onion skinning. And then the gray goes on top. Again, juggle those layers, y'all. Juggle those layers. Right, we need it here too. There we go. There we go. That makes sense. There we go. Hang on, stay with me. Make it invisible. Turn this up. Max opaque. Gray. Yeah, that has to be there, right? And then if you need to erase anything, this is a good point. You can hit E. And then similarly, so I have an eraser. You can see it's right there. I can make it harder or softer. I want to keep it soft. But, right? Oof, not all that. But that's the idea. I'll make that invisible, and then we'll just come into this last one. Yeah, I don't want that to be. Oops. Again, layer juggle. Layer juggle, y'all. Cool. I think that's it. So I'm going to leave it for now on this, but this is just stuff that you guys, you folks can mess with differently. So now we reduce these, reduce this. Now we have 3 different frames, right? With 3 different colors on each frame. Now we can animate. Shall we? So animation requires you to pull up the timeline. So window, timeline, and then here it is. I'm going to do Command 0 to bring this into the middle. We're going to create a frame animation. My head's going to be in the way, so I'll move it really quickly. All right, we're going to create a frame animation. So that was cool how I just floated, wasn't it? Frame animation. And by default, it's going to take everything on this frame. It's going to take everything that is visible, so that has the visible eye in your Photoshop. And we don't need that. We just need all of the information that is on frame 1 and the still life, the drawing, right? So that's what it's going to look like. We'll look at that in a second. Then I'm going to hit this right here. Again, this is like the same icon for add a new layer is to add a new frame. So do that, and then I want to deselect frame 1 and select frame 2. So now I have a 2-frame animation, which I can preview. Then I can hit, make sure that you're on frame 2 when you hit the new frame button. And again, a little juggling, make that go away, and make frame 3 visible. And it looks like in frame 3, I need to finish up my gray layer. So come here, gray. Yeah, I need to do that really quickly with the brush. Love it. So now, this is my wild animation. And if I want to, I can hit stop and I can remove that from all of them. And you can see this sort of thing, this like the, remember the Alexis Jamette from the beginning, or Jamette, I don't know how to pronounce it, but we're starting to get that feeling. So I invite you to, this is up to you. You can choose if you want to have your line drawing in all of them, the sort of the cell animation technique, or if you want it to be invisible for all of them, and then just have this more ethereal, suggestive animation of a form, sort of more abstract. Okay, and then I also invite you to mess around with the color. So remember, you can double click on this, which is the place linked, and it will open up your Photoshop, and it will open up your Illustrator, and you can mess with the color here, you can mess with the design some. You can also, this is in properties, so let's go kind of like, have to save it, and then we'll go back to Photoshop, and it updates, and I'm not sure that that's for me. But I want to also tell you, actually, maybe I do like that. I'm going to leave it. This tutorial has gone on quite long enough. So let's export this. Let's export this. Oh, I need to make, do I want to do it? Yes. Hold on. Hey, so I got a little lost in my process here, and I was messing with colors, and I got really into it, so I figured you'd have to go through that process with me. But I do want to show you that if you need to affect all of the frames at one time, you definitely want to make sure you're working on the frame 1. So I don't know if you noticed in my sped up process that when I changed the color here, it affects all of the colors. Versus when I just change one frame at a time. So I'm going to leave it as this, and I also want to show you really quickly that if you shift-click on all of the frames, so click on one, and then shift-click on all of them, you can affect the time. So you can't see it. Of course, it disappears off your screen. But you can make these go for a slower amount of time, right? Or, like before, you click on it, shift-click, click right down there on the little drop-down, and you can have it go for a slightly faster amount of time. You can make adjustments there as you see fit. I guess I didn't really adjust that. Other 0.4, 0.04. Let's see what that looks like. I kind of like the 0.1. All right. So again, that's an adjustment that you all can mess with. That's it. So now we export as a GIF. File. Stay with me, computer. Export. Save for web legacy. Here's the pop-up. Right now it's 300. Let me zoom out here so you can see it all. It's 322 kilobytes, which is beautifully small. Actually, let's turn our lossy all the way down in case yours wasn't. It's still only 600 kilobytes. 800. Look at this. This is beautiful. And then we want to make sure it's looped forever. And then let me make sure my big head's not in the way. And you want to hit save, not done, because done won't do what you want to do. So save it. Know where you're saving it. Last little thing. Make sure you save this as a Photoshop file. So all we did was export as a GIF, but you need to make your file save. No, well, mine had already saved as Untitled, but file, save as, if whatever. Just make sure you save it. You need that PSD file, all right? So demo, right, spring 2021, love it. Just make sure you save, y'all, okay? Truly, it was an honor.